of the day, morning, week, where we have a checkup with Dr. Mighty Jamie, and he's not a medical doctor, but when he does his podcast, sometimes he puts on this medical gown, and I was quite amused by that. But you must check out his podcast, by the way, Mighty Jamie TV. He really, really analyzes stories quite well, which is why we've stolen him to unpack what's been happening. So, Mighty Jamie, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much always for joining us and giving us insights on all the top stories that are playing out. How have you been keeping?
I've been keeping well. Good morning to you. Good morning to the viewers and listeners.
All right, so let's begin with this. Sudanese army says that it will only broadly accept the U.S. brokered peace plan if the rapid support forces withdraw from every city they've occupied since May 2023. I mean, these two sides seem like they're still miles apart because the chances of that happening just seem so remote. Your thoughts?
Yes, Peter. I mean, we've seen this war unfolding for the last 3 years, fundamentally because of differences of opinion between the rapid support forces as well as the Sudanese army. So the condition that the rapid support forces must, evacuate every area that they've occupied since 2023 is one that is not likely to be accepted by the rapid support forces themselves and is likely to not be something that is going to happen. So it's not something that is going to lead to a permanent ceasefire. But the proposal itself is an interesting proposal because what the US has called for is a 90-day humanitarian truce, which would allow for the negotiation of a permanent ceasefire and a civilian-led transition to elections. So that's a good idea. What they've also called for is a unified national army with disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration arrangements. And that also seems to be part of the way that you could get to this resolution. Now, the issue becomes let's call it political leadership of both of these armies, because you've got Hemeti, you've got, Al-Fatah, Buran there, and all of them seem to have an ambition to run the country and to be leadership of the country. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of resolution around how you do that, because what the people protested for in 2019 was not for military rule. It was not for refreshing of the dictatorship, so to speak. It was for civilian-led rule. America seems to support that, and America seems to be pushing for a civilian rule. Now, in terms of will we get there, it still seems like it's a long way off to get there. But if we can at least see some diplomatic pressure towards this 90-day humanitarian truce, that would be something that's quite helpful because it will allow for international organizations to go in and provide support. It will allow for people to actually get an understanding of the full impact of this 3-year war, which has been, I think, the most significant war in Africa for a very long period of time, maybe going back as far as the DRC wars in the early 90s rather. So this is quite significant, and it needs to get to a point where it can happen and you can get a truce. Will the leaders agree? Unclear. This particular condition that has been thrown as a precondition by the Sudanese army leadership is one that is not likely to be accepted by the other side.
Africa, 54 countries, which means that elections are happening pretty much all the time. So in a few weeks' time, we go to Zambia on the 13th of August. President Hakainde Hichilema seeking a second term in office. And there seems to be an emerging challenge from opposition leader Brian Mundubile. I wonder what we can make of this, because it sounds as if, and these are reports you read over time, that Hakainde Hichilema has managed the opposition quite well to a point that it looks as if he's going to win this one easily.
Yes, Peter, it does look as if Mr. Hichilema is going to have an easy run in terms of the second round, and he's going to get, a second term. It's relatively easy for an incumbent who has made some progress with some of the big issues. If you recall, to win again, if you recall going into his administration, there was a lot of concern about corruption. There was a lot of concern about debt. There was a lot of concern about the international reputation, the influence of China in Zambia. And he was able to manage some of these things relatively effectively. He got a lot of support from the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, and that I think cushioned some of the economic consequences. Mr. Hichilema himself is quite able to, navigate the global stage, and is somebody who is coming from a business environment, has been able to create more order than there was in the previous dispensation in terms of the public perception of how the country is being run. There are some criticisms, of course, that he has created a new elite, and that a lot of the fundamental conditions in the country have not changed. But because he has had some wins on the scoreboard, it does make any challenges to him right now not likely to have, an easy wicket, so to speak. But the other thing that works to his favor is that his biggest rival is no longer alive, unfortunately. And that's something that I think gives him a reprieve, because now he is facing challengers who do not necessarily have the stature, who do not necessarily have the same sort of runway or history in terms of being on the most senior and prominent levels of Zambian politics. So as things stand right now, it looks as if his prospects are relatively solid. And it is, of course, an ironic feature of African politics that, Africa rather, that we're always having these elections and not a lot of change. But Zambia is one of the countries that has been, open to changing its leadership and has been relatively stable in terms of democratic transitions. There was some regression here and there, but by and large, they do seem as if they are respecting the democratic process.
Yeah, I mean, the voters are going to have a tough one because whilst the economic indicators suggest that he's done well, the fact is 70% of Zambians still live in poverty, and they're the ones that are going to have to vote. So, anyway, we'll see how that one plays out. But here in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has pushed back the Madlanga Commission's final report from the end of August to November. It seems as if after every new witness, a new story breaks out. And I mean, at some point, this is going to have to end, right? But it certainly doesn't feel like it should end now.
Well, it would have been premature for it to end now, Peter, because a lot of witnesses have, coincidentally or fortuitously fallen sick, been victims to assaults and all manner of violence. And that has allowed them to evade the hot seat, so to speak. And as you've mentioned, there are some witnesses who have now been, or people who have been implicated, who do need to appear and get a full run through the rigmarole, so to speak. But having said that, I was looking back at some of the commissions, and some of them have actually lasted much longer than we would have anticipated. And it looks as if this one has opened the Pandora's box and may need to actually go on for a bit longer. And as we've mentioned before, what makes this commission different is that as it's going, people are being arrested, people are being suspended, people are being taken through disciplinary processes. And it's something that has made it capture the South African imagination in a different way to prior commissions. But a welcome move by President Ramaphosa. I do think that his hand was forced a little bit because the public has been very invested and interested in this particular topic. And there was a lot of sentiment that the commission must go on until they get to the bottom of all of the shenanigans that have been emanating in the criminal justice system.
Mighty Jamie, always great talking to you, and we'll chat again next week. Have a great one.
Cheers.
That's our regular commentator, Mighty Jamie, making sense of the stories that were the week that's been. It's 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Good morning, Jwalani Tulongwebe.
SABC News.